Hey everyone, my name is Matt. Welcome to my shop. Today I'm going to take you through making the miter pairing wedge jig thingamabobber. I had a few people ask about the makeup of this little jig thing here, and I thought we'd run through the process of it a little bit since it's seemingly simple, but it's got some minutia in there that we can cover. So if you're not familiar, this is a little jig that you can put over the edge of a board. It helps you pair a miter. In my case, I use it for a mitered through dovetail, but you can use it for tweaking miters on literally any joinery that you happen to be cutting. So I have two of these jigs here. I have one that's made out of plywood, and I have one that's made out of walnut. And the story there is why I have two is because I made this one, and then I needed it, and I couldn't find it, so I made another one. So there's a little kind of fun learning experience here with the overall sizing of everything. So we'll kind of go into sizing here real quick, and then we'll talk a little bit about the wood and get it all prepped and ready to go. So the first one I made, I actually like the size a lot better. It is about 6 inches long and 3 inches wide, and it is 4 pieces of 1/2 inch plywood, so it's pretty close to 2 inches thick. The second one I made is actually a little bit on the small side. So it is 4 1/4 by 3, and it's I think it's like 1 5/8 thick. The biggest thing there is you want to have enough room to actually clamp this thing to your workpiece and not have the clamp get in the way. So with this one, it is a little bit kind of annoying to get the clamp in the right place, but you can do it. This one gives you so much more clamping surface to get that clamp somewhere and out of your way that I think a little bit bigger like this is probably the way to go. So I have 2 different blanks here, which will make a couple of new ones here. So we're gonna make exactly the same ones, exactly the same thing again. I have a chunk of walnut here. This is an offcut from a, what's it called? The gun stock. I was thinking firearm thing. This is an offcut from a gun stock manufacturer that my buddy Pablo brought me many years ago from Northern California. That's exactly what this one here is. It's a piece of Claro walnut. And then I have a lamination here of 3 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood. So this one is a little bit thicker. It is, oh, look at that, a little over 2 inches thick. And this one, by the time I mill it up, will be closer to, I don't know, 1 3/4 inches, just something like that. So we're gonna take the blocks to the machines here and get our rough, actual finished blocks ready to go. And then I'll see you over on the table saw for cutting the miters and cutting this big rabbet here on the bottom. Now we have our blocks all roughly cut to kind of width. We need to make the final miter cuts on here. And we have, of course, the miter cuts as well as this big rabbet on here. I think it's easier to cut these miters on here first, because then you have all this support here for this slightly more critical cut. So we're gonna set up for that first. I've got my miter gauge here. I'm gonna set that here for 90. Just reset this thing, make sure it's right on the money, and then I'll make some test cuts. And we'll check our actual cuts to make sure they're accurate. And we can kind of tweak things from there. So that is set square, and I'll tip the blade to 45. Okay. All right, so we are all set up. I'm going to start this one because it's bigger. We'll make a kind of a first cut, and then we'll check it to make sure it's actually square and at 45 degrees. right, so we have our test cut, and we can check it for square and 45. So this guy is actually sitting really nice at square, which is pretty nice. And then for 45, let's see how we're doing here. This fence into here. It is like a tiny little itty bitty bit out, but I think that is completely reasonable as far as error goes, because this is so exaggerated. We're going to be using this to pair a pretty small area. So I am happy with that margin of error as far as the setup goes. So now I can cut the actual all the way through this thing and make it nice and sharp, and then cut the other 45 and cut the other block with its 245s. So now for a little bit of the actual minutia to this actual jig thing, and it is the size of this rabbit here. What you really want for this thing is for it to be able to lap over your workpiece without touching your table or your clamping surface. So for instance, on this one, if I put this guy on here, I have a little gap there down there at the table. If I flip it up like this, you actually see that the jig is shorter than the workpiece. That just makes sure when you clamp it in place, it's also going to clamp that workpiece in place for you and not going to move. So depending on the thickness of workpieces you do the most, I don't know, dovetailing, whatever pairing you're going to do this with, that's going to determine the size of this rabbet, or the depth of it at least. So in my case, I do mostly 3/4, so the depth of this rabbet is about 5/8 of an inch, and then the width is the other little thing here, and it's going to determine how much support area you have for your chisel. This one I don't have a whole lot, so I think this time I'll set up to go with a little bit of wider area so I have more support for the chisel as I'm coming in this direction or something. But this one is less critical. It's more of a personal preference depending on how much support you actually need for the back of the chisel. So my blade set here to 5/8 of an inch, and then we'll just set the fence for roughly where we want this rabbet to start. So like last time I had it like, maybe I'll do like something more in that range now. So that'll give me, what is this? This is an inch right now, so it'll give me about 1.25 inches or so of support on this side of the mitered area. So with that in place, I can run both my blocks and make the first face of this rabbet. So typically when you're doing a two-pass rabbet like this, you want the off piece, or the offcut, to kind of fall away from the blade. You don't want to set it up this way so that the offcut gets stuck in there, because this can pretty easily come back at you. In this case, with this kind of goofy shape here, if I set it up that way, this feels not particularly safe or stable. So what I'm going to do on this one is I am going to run it this way, but I'm going to lower my blade a little bit. That way the piece actually stays there through the whole cut, and we'll finish up a little bit of that cut over at the bench with some hand tools. And I think it's going to be a lot safer and cleaner than trying to run it with that tiny little flat spot against the fence. So I have to reset my fence here for this cut, and then I'll drop the blade a little bit. Right around there or something. And I can make this cut a lot of a more comfortable manner. All right, let's clean this guy up and get a little prettier looking. This, and let's take this thing. There we go. Paring block time. Still a little more. Okay, so there are a couple of mitered pins. So that's the exact procedure I'd use if I was doing this for an actual dovetail joint. These little jig things are super convenient, make the process of making a mitered through dovetail very easy. And you can see my hand tool cabinet here. I have 36 of these miters on this cabinet, and that block came in really handy. The case has the miters on the front face, and then the doors are double mitered just like this. So there is a miter on the front and on the back. And I think it makes for a really clean look with the dovetail joinery instead of having the pin board or the tail board running past the end and having more of a lap joint type thing. The miter really makes it a little bit more crispy and whatnot. So that is the miter pairing, I don't know, L block jig thingamabobber. Hopefully you make one of these in your shop. Super easy to make and makes this process super easy and maybe kind of fun because you get some of that fun end grain pairing action and all that fun sounds and stuff. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you, as always, for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments about whatever this was or anything here in the shop, please feel free to leave me a comment. As always, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking.